Awesome. Okay. Welcome. I'm really excited to teach this course for you. This is for people who are just like wanting to get into tarot. You're curious, and I'm just going to give you some like basic foundations so you can do it and get into it. So, yes. Okay. So, history nerd over here. I have to know like where things come from, what's going on. Um, the tarot is going to be a little bit tricky because you can't really trace where it came from, but I'm going to give you a little bit of information here. History of tarot. So pretty much it made its prominence in the 15th century as an Italian game called Tarocchi. I'm totally not pronouncing it right, but it was a card game, okay? And that's kind of like where people can trace tarot back to. But its origins are going to be a lot more ancient than that. No one really knows where the concept of tarot originated, but there is speculation that tarot is tied to the Kabbalah and or the Egyptian book of Thoth. So some people say that tarot is literally like a picture book of the Kabbalah. Okay. And so it's these images that are gonna pretty much like trace this journey of consciousness, of spirituality, of coming to source. So, you know, no matter like the exact origins of tarot, we know that it's ancient. We don't really know, but one thing is true that the concepts and the wisdoms communicated in the cards are universally understood.
Mhm.
Tarot is the story of the human experience, and it pretty much tarot, it's like it leaves us clues on how to deepen our connection with something greater. Also, just studying tarot, it's like magic in general, which is, magic, especially practiced by women and femmes, has been oppressed. And so it's not hard to imagine that this divination tool of tarot had to be kept secret and hidden in plain sight, hidden like a game that you would just play and not something that is actually this magical practice. And so, I think that for the safety of tarot and for the ones that are practicing it, that's why there's this secrecy around really its origins and where it actually came from. So that's a little bit of the history of tarot. And now, okay. So what is tarot? What is tarot? So tarot is a deck of 78 cards. There's 22 major arcana cards. There's 4 court cards, 10 pip cards, and then 4 different suits. So I'm going to kind of get into, just like a basic overview of these. And once you kind of have that foundation, you can branch off and make tarot your own. Okay, major arcana. So says that the 22 cards that make up the major arcana can represent the archetypes that live in the human consciousness. The archetypes are something that Carl Jung, a psychologist, talks about, but are, much more ancient than that as well. Um, the path of the 22 cards, when you can lay them out and in order, it shows you this path of discovery, of first discovering your soul's true purpose, then knowing your higher self, and then connecting to source. It's really interesting because you can lay them out in groups of 7, with the Fool being one that kind of just bounces around. And so that makes it 22, but if you break it up into 7s, we got 21. And the first 7 cards are going to represent the conscious journey in the physical world. we have the first 7 cards that are laid out here. And you start with the Magician. You start with number 1, knowing that you are the creator of your reality. Okay? You are the Magician. And the energy kind of grows. This first row is really about like our journey in the material realm. You know, you have the Empress who has all the material things. You have the Emperor who now isn't satisfied with all the material things. You have the Hierophant, which is going to be, you know, false prophets, people who are trying to steer you astray. You have the lovers, the relationships that you form in the material world, and then the Chariot, the vehicle that drives all of it. And you know, for a lot of people, it's kind of said that like this is their journey. People can live, have a wonderful life, and die and never get past the Chariot. Like, and that's okay. But tarot is much deeper than that. And so you can jump into the next level, the second row, and that's going to be our 8 through 14. And this is that deeper conscious journey of, okay, you know, I feel like maybe I've lived the material world. I've kind of got it figured out, but what's next? What's more? And so the tarot lays out this next journey for you in the major arcana, which is first, you know, coming to justice. It starts with justice, which is very interesting. It's, you know, giving yourself justice. And then I'm not going to go through each of them because it's a lot, but also starting off with tarot, I suggest doing this practice of laying them out and just intuitively seeing what story comes to you, because it's a story. So see what is the story? What is the story telling you? So you go through this journey. You have the Hanged One who hangs upside down to, you know, induce this like enlightened kind of trance state. And then there's death that comes after that could be suggested of this type of ego death, or just this death of the material world into another realm.
Phoebe, I just have a quick question. So I know sometimes people get really freaked out by, like, you know, if they get the Devil card or the Hanged Man or whatever. What would you say to that when it comes to like the symbology and what it actually means? So people aren't like fearful of it, or they, you know, kind of demystify the fear around it.
So first I would say that, you know, not that you have to be afraid of it, but like there is a reason why it does induce some fear. And for, yeah, right, like the Devil card, like that's one that, yes, people are like, oh my goodness, no, like everything's gonna come crashing down. But in reality, like this, it's gonna be an all like a representation of like everything that's like gonna be going on in your conscious, in your subconscious, in your mind. So number 1, you have power and you have control over this card is gonna come to you when you might be doubting yourself, when you might be doubting that you have that power, you have that control. It might come when you are in some type of really toxic situation that's taking your power away from you. It's supposed to, you know, it's supposed to induce, or it's gonna tap into that fear that comes with lack of power, that kind of comes with helplessness. But it's gonna help you like walk through that and show you that this isn't the end, right? Like this is the Devil's actually just the jumping off point to an even greater understanding of your power and higher self and source. And so, and that's the other thing with tarot, is that cards are connected. It's not just like one end all be all message, right? And so yeah, like that, there is, I think that like okay to have a little bit of a fear, but also being like, okay, well, why am I afraid? Like what's the root of that? Because that's what this card is trying to get you to figure out is what's the root, instead of just staying in that fearful place and then moving on and keep going in this cycle, right? Like it's really here to break that for you.
Beautiful. Thank you for clarifying that, because I think that's something, you know, people see the death card and then they're like, oh, what does that mean? Am I gonna die? Right. And
right.
and that's not what it means.
No, and that's right. That's the other one with the death card. This is like my favorite card because it means that something is being let go, and there's gonna be like a door opening for you. It means that the universe is making room for something more. This is the ultimate rebirth. Like I love this card because it has the snake who sheds its skin, right? Like it's still, the snake is still here, but it's just constantly shedding and leaving behind all the unnecessary energy that we don't need anymore. We also have the skeleton, like this giving back to the earth. Like everything comes back to earth, right? Like we are just this cycle of oneness, of death and rebirth. And I that's what I like about the tarot too, is it kind of breaks down these stigmas and stereotypes that we have in our head of these fearful things that are really just part of the human experience. Yeah. We're all gonna die. Like, you know, and it doesn't mean when you get the death card, you're gonna die, but something is not gonna be here anymore. There is gonna be some type of this death, but with death always comes birth. It's connected. Yeah.
I like to think of it as like the seasons, right? It's like in the winter, yes, the leaves fall off, things die, but then new life is brought forward. I love that.
Exactly, right? The wheel is always turning, and we can't and I like the tarot too, because it's like, okay, we're not going to fight against this energy. Let's just like see where it's going. Like let's ride it out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the 15 to the 21 is going to represent the deepest journey of knowing the void, of knowing oneness and everything. We start with the tower on this journey, and the tower is all about destruction and you know, having the power in your hands to destroy, right? Like that's some pretty cool shit. And then we have this really like this healing and this awakening, and you come to the sun and judgment, and you end with the world. You end with this concept that everything is connected. It all comes back to this oneness and self. And then along the way, you always have the Fool. So the Fool is always intuition itself. And so intuition is always following you throughout all of that. And that's why it's the number 0. Which people are like, it's not even a number, but whatever. But yes, so that's the journey of the major arcana. And when you are starting out tarot, I recommend separating your deck into the major arcana cards and then the rest of the deck, and first getting to know the major arcana. And then once you get that story, once you kind of understand what that's communicating to you, then you add in the rest of the deck, and then you start working with all that energy together. When you are reading for people and you get a major arcana card, it's going to mean that it's a lot more energy than the other cards. A lot of the time, so the other cards are gonna guide us through pretty much like everyday life, everyday journeys, things that we're going through, experiencing. When you get a major arcana card, it's asking you to look deeper, to go deeper, to look at self and oneness and your connection with consciousness. That's the challenge that the major arcana brings to the deck.
And so when you're first like laying those cards out and you're looking at them, like you're kind of going one at a time, like how would you, what could they do, could someone learning do to really kind of start to use their intuition with the card? Like, is there any tips you have around like what they can notice or,
Yes.
feel into
So
or
definitely, like, and that's the other thing that I love about tarot is that, and that's why it's so important to be drawn to the deck that you're using, because the art is gonna speak volumes, right? Like we say, pictures are 1,000 words. Like it's really gonna it's really gonna tell stories for you. So yeah, just like there's gonna be so much symbolism within the card. The magician is wearing this leopard fur, right? It's giving divine feminine wisdom, this feline like real intuition going on. They have part of their foot in the water, this cleansing water force, like, and so when you're laying the cards out, get a journal out and pick out the symbolism of the cards and what it means to you, right?
Mhm.
Because symbols speak to us, and there's universal symbols, but there's symbols that really just speak to you. And so figuring out what that means, what the lightning bolt means, right? Like, and yeah, so I suggest just, yeah, connecting with the deck and picking out the symbolisms of each of the major arcana cards and kind of just going through like, okay, right, and that's how you start building that language with the cards. It starts with the symbolism, the imagery of it.
And
Mm-hmm.
then how would you say you bridge that gap then when you start like reading for a friend or someone else? Like how do you start to know that what you thought the card meant is what it meant?
So my belief is that the people that you're reading for are your reflections. They are a part of you. And so that intuitive, those messages, like, because you decided you're a tarot reader, you're the messenger and they're coming to you. So, like you are speaking the same language. It's up to you to create that language, but you, because they understand that language that you're speaking, basically. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, knowing that, yep, like leaning on that. And then, you know, the more I do it too, like the more I can kind of like ground myself in other people's energy and kind of let it direct the words that I say. But
Mhm.
like that initial meaning that it's communicating to me is the right, like it's what has to be said. But yeah, once you're really in tune, once you really start to learn how to tune into other people's energy, you might use different words but the meanings are the same, but you're just communicating it so they can understand it.
It sounds like you have to really start to develop trust with yourself and your intuition.
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure, because and that was me starting off is like, okay, like, am I just, because sometimes you feel like you're just talking to yourself and something, and I feel like a lot of like readers will say too, like something something that they just worked through or like have been going through, people will come to them and be going through the same type of thing. And so it's like you really are kind of just talking to yourself. It's like you have that wisdom and now you're sharing it. Like but
Mhm.
just know that like you're in the position you're in because like you are that channel, because people want to know what your wisdom and what you have to say and it's valuable to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And over time, the more you do it, the more you start to trust it. I know that's for me,
Exactly.
for me as a psychic medium, it was I just had to really trust the messages that were coming through, trust the information that was coming through. And over time that really solidified the more validation. Typically, I don't look to others for validation, but in this case, it can really be helpful.
Yeah, for sure. It's yeah, it's that practice. And
Mhm.
yeah, and then it feels so good when people are like, "Oh yeah, like yeah, that makes sense." Or and I've had readings where like the person won't say anything. the whole time. And I'll just be like, you know, and I kind of like get nervous, like, oh my gosh, like in their head, are they just like, oh, like she's just, you know, like she's just like totally not even right, full of it. But like once that reading is over and I'm kind of like checking, like, okay, like how are you feeling? Like, and kind of get something out of them, they'll usually be like, oh yeah, that was right on. They just weren't ready to share what it was with me, you know, which is totally okay. Like, and I tell people, and this is something that you can use when you're starting off reading is, you know, I'd be like, okay, you know, like this isn't a psychic reading, this is a tarot reading. So the more you share with me, the deeper I can go into the cards, but it's totally up to you. I will read whatever I read, and it's up to you if you want to go deeper or not. You know, just kind of giving people the opportunity, like, and then it takes the pressure off of yourself of being like, okay, like what can I dig up for them? Like, because some people just aren't ready. Like they just need that first layer. Like some people aren't ready to go into the depths. But yeah.
I think too, you know, it's important to not take anything personally either, because some people just have a really good, you know, poker face and aren't, like you said, ready to share, you know, how accurate that was or how that affected them or what they're experiencing. And so I think that's really important to keep.
And really just trusting, because I'm having another, I'm remembering another reading where I told this woman, like, I think you're gonna get like a new job, or like like you're gonna quit your job, and like she was like, no, like what do you even no, you know, and was like very like not like feeling that. I'm like, oh okay, you know, kind of like, well, let's see what these other cards are saying. Like we want to talk about career. Literally like 3 months later, she messaged me and was like, I'm switching positions at my job, but I would have never, you know, like thought that was like the case. And now I'm like doing this completely different thing. And she's like, it all came together. And I was so resistant when you told me that, because I just wasn't ready. And so that's the other thing, is that some of us are looking pretty far into the future. You don't, and with tarot, it's like people will ask you like, oh, you know, kind of give you like, try and give you a timeline. They ask for like a timeline. I'm like, no, like I cannot give you a timeline. Like you know, I can just tell you what I'm telling you, but like time is its own element. And so like, I do not control time, but I will be like, this is what we're picking up. And so sometimes it can be pretty far in the future. And so that could also be like why you might get some vibes, and then like a couple months later they come back and they're like, you know what, you were right. You know, that validation will come.
Totally. Sometimes it takes sometimes a while, if not some. I've even had readings I've done where like years later I get a message, right? Like spirit doesn't work on our timeline. Like humans, we like to try and control things with time, and it doesn't work that way when you're working with energy. I love that. So please continue.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. What do we got next? Okay. So yes, now we are into the suits. So this is how I connect to them. I feel like this kind of gives you a good foundation, then you can run with it. But we're talking about the suits. Oh, awesome. So we have cups, and you can, you know, cups, water, right? Like you fill your cup up with water. Like that's going to be kind of that starting off point. And so, okay, water is a symbol. So what does water mean? Water means emotions. It means intuition. It means feelings. So when you're reading and you get something comes up in water, a lot of the times I'm like, okay, you're going through something emotional. This is an emotional energy that we're working through right now, right? So you can get into the realm, you can get into the mindset based on the suits. So we're talking about cups. Like this is my 6 of cups right here. Right? And so very much water vibes. And that's the thing with tarot, is that like so much of the intuition is going to come from the pictures and what you're getting out of that. Yes. So yes, so we have cups, and then we have our swords, and swords are going to be our air element. And so air element is in our thoughts and our mental space. So when swords start coming up, you're like, okay, this is your mental realm. You know, sometimes it could be like, oh, there's some type of mental block going on, or there's a perspective shift that needs to happen. You know, you're working in that headspace realm. Then you have pentacles, which in my deck are discs, and that's going to be our earth energy. So that is the physical realm. So that can mean our bodies, and that can mean the material world. So if you're doing a reading and you get all pentacles, all discs, that person might be a little too obsessed with material things, too into the material world. And that's the other thing, is that everything balances each other out. So if you're doing a reading and you're getting a lot of the same suit, it means that they need some balance of the other suits. Okay. And so kind of a good tarot reader will be able to see the cards that are missing. They'll be able to see what elements, what things need to come into the picture that aren't popping up because you're just picking up on their energy. The cards are their energy. So now you're like, okay, well, this means we need to balance this. How do we balance this? So we got the discs and earth, and then wands, which are our fire element. So that's going to be our creation, passion, action, destruction, even. And that's going to be that realm of pretty much like the realm of like alchemy, of like bringing things from source, kind of from this void into the physical, is wands. All right. Yes. Okay, so we have our suits. Now we have our 4 court cards. So our court cards, the kings, which for me are shamans. So I'll show you this. This is the shaman of cups right here. So in general, kings, shamans are going to represent experience. They're going to represent power and self. It's going to be the shamans are unfazed by fear and doubt. And the force, even if you get shamans in cups, which cups are water, they're also, shamans represent fire energy, and they're influenced by the planet Mars. I also love my deck because shamans are historically androgynous. They're trans, or they're two-spirited, and so they embody and balance the energies of masculine and feminine. And so yes, shamans are deeply rooted in this power of self. Shamans are also the ones that travel into the underworld. They gain wisdom, and then they come back out and share that wisdom with others. So when you're doing a reading, and if you get a shaman, you know, it's all based on people's energy, but shaman could indicate that the universe is like, this is someone who should be using their power for wisdom, who should be tapping into this power and help being a teacher and guiding, and that type of energy. If you're getting, if you get a lot of shamans, it might be a little too much power. They need to check their power. Are they using their power over other people? Because shamans they're powerful, but they don't use power to control people. They use power of self to create. All right, so then we move on to our queen, or our priestesses. I have my priestess swords right here. And priestesses are going to represent sacredness. The priestess is the channeler, the psychic. It's divine feminine energy. And the priestesses are going to be influenced by Venus and the moon. So there's some things that like always anchor me. The elements anchor me and the planets anchor me. And that working with those energies, I can figure out what each card is trying to communicate, because those are my anchors. So if like planets and elements speak to you, start like incorporate that's what I do, is I incorporate that into the tarot, so I know that system, because there are so many cards. It's like you can't memorize like the meaning of every card, but if you know Venus is related to my heart center, it's love, it's feminine. The moon is intuition, it's dark, it's the void. You know, it's all about symbolism. And then when we come back to that language, it's okay, but now how do I just communicate this to someone so they understand it, right? You're like that bridge of like speaking in tongues and in symbols and then translating it so someone can actually understand that. All right, and then we have the suns. My bearded dragon is crawling around. So we have the knights, or the sun's energy, and that this is going to be divine masculine energy, and it's gonna show up as verbal analytical awareness. It's going to speak through words, theories, and numbers, and they're influenced by Mercury. Mercury is going to be our related to our sacral center too, this center of creation. And so it's very much like the action of creation that we get with the suns. So our knights. So if you're getting this in a reading, you know, or sometimes for people it's like, okay, you need to balance this divine masculine energy into yours. I do readings. I've done readings for men, but a lot of the times I attract women and femmes. And so sometimes that energy will come up and it'll be like, okay, like there might be a lack of this masculine energy, and it could be due to trauma. And so like, how do we start like healing that trauma of the masculine energy, right? Because we are both. And so once again, you know, tarot is about balance. Like, what are we trying to balance here? What's coming out? And then we have the page, which is the daughters for me. And daughters are going to represent her younger self, that child self. This energy is going to be full of life and excitement. And it's going to be really this like unconscious part of us. So it's going to communicate through sensation, emotions, our imagination, and that the daughters are going to be connected to Jupiter and the sun. And so when we're getting daughters in a card, it's a lot of the times they'll be like, you just need to just open up and just receive, just let this energy come into you. Sometimes people can be pretty like gated and held up. And so if daughters are coming up, it's like, okay. And if daughters, and right, so if you get daughters in cups, daughters of cups, okay, you need to open up emotionally. If you're getting daughters in swords, there's some mental blocks going on. How do we just tap into like this imagination? How do we just tap into this like childlike, I'm just gonna play for hours and not even, you know, like just get lost in your head type space. Yeah, so really kind of figuring out how those speak to you. And then it's just it's like a puzzle. It's like a building block. You just kind of like put the pieces together. It's like, okay, so sun and cups, and, you know, and you're just placing them and creating that story. Yes. Okay. So now we have our numbers, and I kind of have a pretty like basic system for the numbers. Some people, you know, they have like, and they know what like this number means, their favorite numbers. And so I'm always like, you know, create the system how you want, but this is what works for me. And a lot of it pretty universal as well. So number one is the ace. Aces are going to be rebirth. Aces are also a gift. So if you get an ace in a card, it's like, okay, something new is happening. There's a new beginning. Tap into that, break free. Twos are going to be balance. If they get a lot of twos in their deck, it means that their energy is kind of craving some type of balance, right? And so it's like, okay, so what if you get a 2 in wands? It's like, okay, how do you balance like all these ideas that you have, everything that you want to do, and actually physically doing it, right? Like it's so bringing that the balance element. And then we have threes. So threes are going to be synthesis. Threes are like, ooh, like things are just coming together. Then we get to 4, and 4 is our number of structure. And you can think of this like if you have all 4 elements, like that is the structure of a house. That's going to be our 4 energy. If you get 5 in a card, 5s are going to be conflict. So conflict is not a bad thing. Conflict is actually necessary to move forward. A lot of people that I read, the first card that comes up is a 5. And it's because they're coming to me, there's some type of transition, conflict going on, and that's the first energy that we need to bring up and work through to get into the next phase. So after our conflict, we're into the 6s, which is expansion. So you've worked through the conflict, and now you can expand and release and fill up that space. And so as you're expanding, the 7s remind you that there's still work to be done and to
always
now, right, to now reflect upon that expansion, reflect upon where you're at. And then once we've done some reflection, we get to the 8s where we can really create some change. 8s are all about change. And 8s can also mean that you're carrying a lot of energy, that something needs to be put down before this real change can happen. So once you figure out what that is, we get into the 9s, which is completion, which like you went through this journey. It's this cycle that like I like the pip cards because sometimes it's like this is a cycle that happens within a day, you know, like this is like we're just living this cycle, and boom, by the end of the day, completion. We wake up transformed next day, right? It could also mean a greater cycle, and it's all about the other cards that are coming in. If you're getting major arcana cards, just supplementing. But yes, so we have 9, which is completion. 9s are like, I always tell people when they get 9s to celebrate, because we have to like consciously mark this as like, you did this, now we are moving on, so celebrate yourself. And then we have 10s, and you are now ready for that transformation and to take on something new. And then you start back over again at the 8s of the rebirth.
So this is where like the 7 of cups would come in, so it'd be like the inner work, and like cups being like emotions, or kind of bringing those pieces and elements together to tell that story. Yeah,
exactly. Yes. So you are pairing you are pairing the suit with the number, and that's what's awesome about the cards, right? Like they'll always, even if like maybe the imagery is messed, like you're not sure, like you always have a number and you have a suit. And so you know something, even if this person has put up all the psychic blocks possible and you can't like get anything from them, you know, you can go, like that's always my foundations. And I'm like, oh, okay, so we got the 8 of cups. So 8's some change is coming. Your energy is craving change in this emotional realm. So it's something emotional that you need to let go of. It's probably not even your emotions. You probably have to let go of some emotions that you're carrying for other people so you can move through this change energy. And like, yes. Exactly.
I'm seeing how it's all piecing together.
Right. So
It's amazing.
once you once you kind of just understand that, it's like then you just have that foundation and you can just, I don't know, I feel like it's like you build the house and then you can go into the house and you're like, whoa, like look at all of this stuff that's in here, and just help people and even yourself. Like I recommend when you're first starting, like read yourself as much as you can, you know, to just really get to know the cards, because at this point, like I can just like pull a card real quick at it for like a second and just know exactly what, like, you know, and it's like, okay, like I know what you're trying to say. And so yes, just really getting to know it. It all comes back to getting to know the deck. And let's see what I have. Okay, divination. So once you learn the deck, you kind of have that foundation to go off of. And really what helped me at first is like it's somewhat like studying. Like I low key always liked school. So like I have my journal out and I'm like taking notes and like making these, and because when I write, it's just like solidifies in my brain more. And so yeah, really doing that, like it because it is a study, and then but you don't have to like know everything, just know the foundation so you can build from that. And once you get into that, then we have divination, which is the act of using the cards to read energy and look into possible future outcomes for people. Like I said, tarot reading is storytelling. So knowing the basics of the cards is like the outline of the story, and then your intuition will fill in those details. Yeah. So feeling love and connection for your deck is really, really important. Like I literally talk to my deck like it's my little baby. Like, I'm just like, oh, like I love you. Like let's like what do you got for me today? You know, sometimes like we get into little arguments, but it's all about just growing that relationship with your deck. And like I was saying, yes, the images will spark intuitive knowledge. So find one that communicates with your unique energy, because there's so many decks out there right now. And there's definitely one for you. Also, like, even though I happen to have this like awesome story of like being gifted this deck, and there are people who are like, oh, like you should only be gifted decks. Like that's the only real way to know. Like I don't believe in that at all. I believe that like we are the creators of our reality, and if you go into your local metaphysical shop with intention of finding a deck, like you'll find the deck that's for you. It doesn't have to be this whole like teacher student thing going on.
Do you feel like it's better to go into a store and find your deck, or can you do that like online too?
Yeah, no, I would say
online.
I'm all for online. I'm techno witch over here. So like I love the abundance of the internet. I think like it's fun to go into the store because you can actually feel the decks. And I would say like when you are thinking about doing this, like go into stores and feel the decks and play around with them. Like you don't necessarily have to buy them. Just kind of get a feel for it, and then go online and you can search for whatever decks that you want. And
I just meant like if they don't have like say a local shop they can support, like can they still feel that energy from the deck even online?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. For sure. And I think no matter, if you don't have that local store, it's like that's just that's the path for you then, right? Like you were supposed to find this deck online. Like it's all meant to be. There's no like wrong way to do that for sure.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, and I think this is my last one, but yes, just like leaving you off with some tips for divination, really just playing with your deck and playing like you're a kid. Like there's no shame of like being wrong or like you know, I mentioned the whole little school thing, but before you even feel like you're studying it, just play with it. Like you don't have to be writing things down, literally just like and play with it and like pick out the ones that like you love the most, the ones that you're most attracted to. Like just like have fun with the deck, lay it all out and no, with no judgment or feeling like you need to know what it means. Then okay, and then just kind of like basics, like pulling 3 or more cards will create a story. So you could just like I'm at the point where I can just pull one card and know everything. But when you're first starting out, it's great to have 3 or more cards to really build a story onto and really start getting into that storytelling mode and the puzzle pieces connecting them because they build off of each other. Like they're meant to be together, right? So they all build off of each other. Yes, and then once you get into it and you're playing with it, you can pull with intention. So talk to your deck, be like, okay, I need some guidance about this person that I'm talking to, you know, like are they actually into me? What's the energy, right? And just see what comes out. But having that intention will guide you, and I think it will also kind of ground you in your own knowing and intuition. Like, okay, like I got this. Like I set this path for me and I'm gonna go on it and I'm gonna see what comes out. And then bottom line, talk to your deck. Um that's the best way to get to know your deck, and like don't filter yourself with like if you're like embarrassed or whatever, like go be somewhere where you can just be alone and just like talk to your deck and see what words come out, because sometimes you'll be surprised in like what even you're trying to say. And then one last thing is like just like the technicality of like shuffling the deck. Like I feel like some people be like, okay, like, but what do I even do? So when I first started doing tarot, I would shuffle the deck and I would take deep breaths and I would just like ask the universe for a sign when to stop. And like sometimes that sign will just be like a word in my head or like it'll just, or like a feeling in my stomach, like whatever it was, the universe would give me a sign and I would stop shuffling and I would pull the first card. That like works for me in the beginning. But what I've found that works so much better for me now is I literally just get super into shuffling the deck, and whatever cards pop out, that's the card. Which look, this is literally my card. This is the Cancer, like related to the astrology Cancer sign. The Chariot. So yes, so playing with the deck, seeing what like feels right. I know some people who are really into numbers, and I think that's cool too, will like figure out a number that they want to count to and will like count to that number and then stop shuffling. I've also had a reader that like will really try and like individually touch every card and see what card pops out from doing that. But like so much of the tarot, it's really just experimenting, seeing what feels right to you. And then other tips is cleansing your deck. So if you are doing readings for other people and even for yourself, you should be cleansing your deck because it's gonna hold on to that energy. So last part of the presentation, long as you're honoring your intuition, there's no wrong way to do tarot. Just let it speak to you. And don't doubt the messages that are coming through. Usually the first thing that pops into your head is the right one. Even if it seems so simple and like intuitive, it's the right way to go. You just got to say it. And then literally just create your own system with the cards. What do they mean to you? That's the most important.
Yeah.
And that is what a tarot with Fifi.
Amazing. Thank you, Fifi. I'd love to go into some questions and to also kind of go a little bit more in depth with some of the other things that I had kind of written down here.
Yes.
So you were talking about shuffling. Can you just like, for those people who don't know how to shuffle, can you like just give a little demo of like what what to do?
Yes. So if you don't know how to shuffle, if that's kind of something that doesn't come naturally to you, literally just throw them all on the floor and spread them out and move your hands all around them, and whatever one you're drawn to, just grab. That can be a great way to start if like the act of shuffling is something that's like getting in the way of doing it. Yeah, literally. And I mean, it'd be even fun to just like throw them and like see what ones like fall face up. Like that type of thing is, you can just really play with the cards that way. And then if you are good at shuffling, like, okay, so my deck is pretty unique because it's round, and I've found that the square ones are kind of just like, I think because I've always worked with a round deck, it just feels so foreign in my hands. And just kind of like big, but whatever like feels right to you. And literally like I kind of just take like half the deck and I just slowly like let it fall off, like lose some pressure in my hands, and just continue to throw it and just like let them fall. So this is a good way to do it. If you're shuffling and like you're just like not getting, a card's not coming out, or you're not feeling like it's a good time to stop, cut the deck. Sorry if that was really loud.
That's okay.
Yeah, so just like cut the deck and split it up. And then that'll give it some new energy into it, and you can kind of just go from there. So yeah, if you're into numbers, number 8 keeps coming to me. So just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the card, right? So it's just however you want to play with it, move it around. But the biggest thing is that you're moving the energy around. Okay, movement is going to be the biggest thing, because that's how we're conjuring, we're getting that energy going, and it's allowing the deck to speak to you. You're giving life to the deck basically by shuffling and moving it.
And then when you're shuffling, are you setting your intention while you're shuffling as well, or do you do that before you shuffle? Like, what is your process?
Yeah, so when I'm reading for other people, yes, like okay, so when I'm reading for another person, I will have them place their hand on the deck so the deck can get their energy if I'm reading in person. If I'm doing a virtual reading, I will literally just picture the person in my mind. If it's someone I've never met before, I'll just say their name. Like I'll somehow pull their energy through me into the deck and put that into the deck. So that's very intentional. Then I will, when I'm reading for people, I'll usually, we usually do a little bit of a consultation. Like I'll ask them, what do you want me to look into? What are you kind of going through? And, some people will exactly know what they want me to look into. Other people will just be like, oh, like kind of just a general thing. And so that's cool too. And so what I'll do is I'll tell my deck, I'm like, okay, like we're just doing a general reading, just general energy read. Like, give me a general energy read on Lori. Like, what, what kind of energy is coming up right now? Yeah. And so just, and that's really as I'm shuffling, I'm talking to the deck, right? And so look at you, you're the Chariot. You got everything you need in the material world to move through. Yes. Keep going. Change is coming. We got the 8 in swords, right? And then, like you were talking about, the 7 of cups.
Did I really
already called it? Yes, you literally called it.
That's
you
so
said
funny.
The 7 of cups.
So good.
So we have abundance. We have abundance in that emotional realm. And so yes, 7s are just like figuring out that inner work of like, where do you want to put it?
Amazing.
Love it.
I didn't know I was going to get a reading today.
I know, real quick.
Just sliding one in there. Yeah.
Yes. So being like, and if you don't feel comfortable talking out loud, talking in your head to the deck, right? But when I'm reading, I am in constant communication with the deck. I'm telling it what I want. I'm literally like, there'll be, if I only want one more card, I'll be like, I just want one more card. I just need, and it'll just give me one card, or I need 3 more cards. It'll give me 3 more cards, so really, yeah.
So with tarot, is there like different spreads that you do? Like in Oracle, there's like 3 spreads or a Celtic spread, that sort of thing. Is that the same in tarot, or?
Yes. So there are spreads. Never been drawn to them. Like, yeah. But I do know, and that's a really good way to start off though, is to if you buy a tarot deck, even if it doesn't come with like a big book, it'll come with a small book that will give you a couple spreads that you can do. And so yes, that is a great way to like start off, have a foundation, have a path pretty much of like what you're reading. I feel like kind of get into, it's like the cards are more of this like energy work kind of pattern for me, where like I don't know, sometimes the spreads seem limiting. Like, I don't want to like limit the energy to like, this is what it is. I kind of like to see what cards pop out, and then intuitively I'm like, oh, this is the story. Like, this is what's coming to me, but yes, there are definitely spreads, and they'll be like in the book with your tarot, or super easily to like Google and look up.
Yeah, I just got the sense that you pick very intuitively, like how many cards you feel like are necessary, or, what you're feeling for someone.
Yep, I do. And it'll be, because, it's really funny because like there's people that I've read that like have, I don't know, it's like they have a lot of built up energy, and they kind of have like this block. And so sometimes I have to pull a lot of cards to actually get to like the future, to actually get out of this like current energy space that they're in. So it is very intuitive for me. Sometimes it's like, oh, 3 cards and like people are good. But sometimes I'm like, okay, like we need to just like I need to just keep pulling, because we're still in this space. Like, I need to get out. Like, how am I? And so, yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. And then you were talking about cleansing the deck or clearing the deck. How do you do that, especially in between like doing readings for people?
Yes. So I always use Palo Santo. That's something that I've always been drawn to. I love a good smoke cleanse. And I feel like, yeah, I'm very sensitive to smells, and so it helps me like cleanse the deck. So I'll always have Palo Santo and a lighter on me, or like a little candle that I can light and then hold over the flame. And so, yeah, super simple is I'll light the hollow. I'm like, I should have brought some in here for me. I'll light the palo, and then I'll move it around the deck, and I'll circle it. I'll circle it this way, and I'll circle it this way. And then I also like to set down the deck and cleanse my hands. And I circle this because your hands are gonna, there's a lot of energy. It's going through your hands too. So yeah, cleansing your deck, cleansing your hands. And it doesn't have to be a long process. It's really just, and it's all about intention. Like I'm using the smoke to cleanse, right? And like, that's exactly what it will do. And after I cleanse, I shuffle it a little bit, and then I always cut the deck and split it, and then on to the next person.
And then when it comes to cleansing, like, would you recommend when you first get a deck to cleanse it as well?
Definitely.
And like get your energy in it, so to speak?
Yes. That's one of the biggest things. Yep. Cleanse the deck before you use it. And if you forgot to cleanse, that's totally fine. Like, you can always cleanse. There's never too late to
Nothing
cleanse.
bad's gonna happen.
No, it's never too late to cleanse. And it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, like I'm cleansing so like demons don't come. It's like you're cleansing because it's a buildup of energy, and it's an energy needs to be released, right? And so you're cleansing because the deck could get confused if there's multiple energies going on and it's not exactly sure which one it's picking up on. So that's why we're cleansing.
And then if you're playing, like, let's say you're just starting out, you just got your deck, you've cleansed your deck, now you're playing with it, you're learning your cards, would you cleanse in between each interaction with your deck too, or only if you're using it with other energies or other people?
Yeah, really, I'm really adamant when I'm with other people, but if it's just me playing with the deck, like it's actually kind of good to like build up your energy in the deck in the beginning. And so yeah, like I would say, a good ritual would be like cleansing on the full moon. But like if you're only using the deck, yeah, you could let your energy build up and then cleanse it in the full moon. However, I would still say do this intuitively, because if you are using the deck and you're like going through some shit, you might want to cleanse it afterwards, because that like more
residual energy.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, yep, exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. So when it comes to now you're done with the reading, you're calling it a day, like what's your process then when you're completing or coming to a completion of a reading?
Are you asking like how I end it, like with or like what I do for myself?
Both. Like when you're giving a reading to someone, how do you end the session? If you're just pulling for yourself, is there a process you do at the end? Like,
okay, that's a really good question. Because I feel like for a long time I didn't really know how to end.
Yeah.
Like, so I was like, I can keep pulling, like, and so yes, like that's why when you're reading for people, it is good to go in with intention. Like, okay, this is gonna be a 3-card reading, and maybe you get 3, 4, 5 cards. Or you're like, this is going to be an in-depth reading. It doesn't matter how many cards comes out, but like, you'll kind of know that's over. It is really interesting because like, if you are like in tuned and kind of like tapped into their energy, you'll kind of know when it's time to stop. Because it's like, okay, like they've heard enough. Like we've gotten to a point. Like you do have to be really tuned in with how people are feeling, even if they are like the really quiet ones, which the people who don't give me much are usually like, I usually don't pull a lot of cards for them either, like it's a two-way street. And so it's really like as much energy as they can handle. But like tuning into that throat chakra too. Like, are you talking? Like, do you feel like you're going to repeat yourself, or you know? And then the other thing with tarot is that it is a story, and so a lot of the times you do see the ending. Like, okay, this is so a good. I don't necessarily call it a spread, but a good one that I do is like the first card is an energy that's blocked. The
Mm,
second card is how to unblock that energy. And the third card is what the future, the path looks like with that unblocked energy,
mm,
And so, kind of like starting off with the threes, you get that feeling of a completed story. So you kind of know how that feels.
yeah.
Um, and then being able to end it. But like, if like, I do suggest, like, if you are doing this, like, out in public with energies and people you don't know, literally setting a timer, because I'm one that can just keep talking, but it's like, oh, okay, our time's up. And I'll check in. I'll be like, so how do you feel? Like, I could pull one more card for you, or like, does this feel good right now? And just like leaving the person with like, okay, like some validation, feeling good about it, and giving them the option of one more card. But yeah, yeah, kind of being able to be like, okay, this is when we shut it off. So you do need to put some boundaries up when you're doing it with other people. When it's with you, I would say just like, and that is why it's so good to practice with yourself, because just feeling like, okay, like that sense of completion, like, okay, that was a good reading, like that really, and you kind of just say like, okay, that felt good, that makes sense.
Yeah.
um and you can play with numbers, like pulling 3 or pulling 7 or pulling 10. Like, these are going to be powerful numbers that are give you a story, and yeah, feeling that out.
I'm curious too, with the 3 card pull, do you ever do like past energy, present energy, and like future energy as well? I know in
Yes,
Oracle that comes up sometimes.
that's like what I started off doing. And it was, I don't know, it kind of wasn't like satisfied with it. Like, it
Mhm.
felt kind of surface level for me.
Mhm.
The the more I did it, and so that's kind of how I transitioned into like, okay, what's the energy here, and how are we
Yeah.
unblocking this, and then let's look into the future. You know,
I love that because that gives it
kind
more
of
of
like the
a
same.
like steps of transformation, right? Versus like,
Yes,
okay, well, you know where you've been. Like,
exactly.
and here's where you are now. And
Hmm.
it feels the questions that you pose feel deeper.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yep, and I think, and I like that you said transformation, because I'm like, yes, that's definitely, like I said, like that energy that I really pull on and work with, and so that's where I'm always trying to move my people when we're doing readings, and even myself. Like, okay, we're transforming. Where are we going? Like, how are we
Yeah.
getting there? Hmm.
I love that. Well, speaking
Hmm.
of which, how can people get there and how can they find you and how
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at Art by Fifi B. And I have a link in there, so you can go to the link and you can book me for readings. I have a couple different options. There's like a real basic one where I'll just pull 3 cards for you and I'll type up a reading and send it to you via text or email. I also have, like, the step up from there would be, I will pull cards for you and video tape it and give you a reading that way, about like 15 to 20-minute reading. And then if you really want to go in depth with me, you can book an in-person reading that will be about 45 minutes to an hour, or I also do it virtually. And so that's where we can like really get into it and do a lot of energy work. But yes, so I have options online. So that'll link you to my website. My website's artbyfifib.com. And yeah, also, like, if you want to just message me on Instagram and we can get it set up through there, I'm always like open to that way too. And then if you are in the Tucson area, I will pop up at markets here and there. And so I always post that on my Instagram if I'm doing readings at markets. But yeah, I would
Amazing.
love to read for you all. And if it is a virtual or online reading, I'll send you a calendar to schedule after you've booked and paid, and then we'll schedule it. So
Amazing.
yes.
Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom about the tarot and just yeah, everything that you shared today was incredible. And the course that you gifted everyone, it's so fantastic. What a great way to like start off their journey with tarot and to be able to kind of really make it their own, which I love that you brought that to our members. That's so exciting, so fantastic. So thank
Yay.
you so much, Fifi, for being here today and sharing your gifts and your wisdom. And I'm so excited for what the future holds for you.
Oh, thank you. No, thanks for having me. This was so fun. I'm excited to do readings for you all. I love tarot, and so I hope like this sparks the love in other people as well, and I can kind of get you started down the road.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording here.
Perfect.